Patriots fans, this would have been an easier question a couple of days ago, but coming off of a big win over Buffalo, I want to know what you guys are thinking right now. Should the Patriots buy or sell at the NFL trade deadline? Type B if you think they should be buyers, or S if they should be sellers. Maybe it comes down to what happens on Sunday in Miami. What say you? Let's dive into today's show. I'm Harrison Graham from Chat Sports, and on today's show, we're going to dive into some trade rumors, and really what we're going to dive into are some trade candidates with the NFL trade deadline 1 week from today, some players on the Patriots roster that they could decide to move on from if they do become sellers over the next week or so. So let's go ahead and dive in here. Josh Uche, the edge rusher. I feel like these first two guys we're going to talk about are the kind of the hot topic names because they would bring you the most in return. They're players that could also receive extensions from Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. Now, Josh Uche, especially starting with last year, has raised his value. I mean, his first 2 years started slow. Last year has the breakout. It's been pretty good again this year. Statistically hasn't been quite as good this year, but he's still putting together a nice year and a half here with New England as one of the better young edge rushers. Now, is he one of those guys that's going to fetch you like a first-round pick and then some like a Brian Burns would? No, he's not to that level, but at the same time, he is a very, very good young pass rusher who's still only 24 years old, and you would think still has room to grow in the NFL. Now, the one downside with Uche is injuries have been a problem for him in his career. Like, he's been in and out of the lineup for New England. So, again, that doesn't help the trade value either, but it's definitely a difference maker. He can play the run. He can play the pass. 3-down player for New England. So, certainly a decision they got to make whether to keep and extend him or to decide and get what you can for him right now and get some capital for the NFL draft. Now, the only way I'm trading Uche if I'm New England is if I can get a second-round pick. I think he's probably right on that fringe of getting a second or third back in return. If I'm New England, I want a top 60 pick. I want a second-round pick for Uche, and if they can get that, great. If not, there's no harm in keeping him. You could extend him. You could franchise tag him. You would have options at your disposal. Because another reason you keep him, too, is even if you let him walk in free agency, there's still the possibility of getting a third-round comp pick, depending on how free agency goes. So I'm not taking anything less than a second. We'll have to wait and see how things play out with Uche. Would you trade him for a second-round pick? Put your GM cap on. Type T for trade or P for pass, and if you would rather keep him, let me know down in the comments. T for trade, P for pass, second-round pick for Josh Uche. Stay on the defensive side of the ball here. Kyle Dugger, the safety, who has been in trade discussions, also rumored to potentially get a contract extension as well. Now, I think if you're trading Kyle Dugger, you're committing to like a heavy rebuild. You're saying, okay, Mac Jones, he's not going to be the guy. We got to draft a quarterback. Bill Belichick, there might even be some thought where you move on from him after this year. This is like okay, we're selling. We're putting our foot in the sand and saying, you know what, raising the white flag. It's not going to happen here. But this would be a tough one for me because Kyle Dugger is a guy you found out of Lenore Ryan, just a small prospect guy, and has been very productive, right? 7 picks over the 21 and 2022 seasons. Doesn't have one this year, but he's a stud. I mean, he's one of your best players. Like, to me, my philosophy when building a roster is, like there are times to rebuild, but even if you rebuild, if you're New England, Kyle Dugger's young. You can rebuild with him. Give him a 3 or 4 year extension and have him be part of the rebuild. Like, I see this with teams all the time. Well, we got to rebuild. We're just going to trade. It's like, you have a 25-year-old player. It's not like he's 30, right? Like for example, if you had a 30-year-old pass rusher compared to Josh Uche, who's 24, and they were doing similar things, that's a different deal because you're not rebuilding with the 30-year-old pass rusher. 24-year-old, though, Kyle Dugger at his age, like, extend him, keep him around, and he can be a part of the future. Now, the question is, what does Kyle Dugger get on an extension? I mean, you look at the highest paid safeties here. I think there's a few of these guys he's better than. A guy like Eddie Jackson, who got paid several years ago, he's had some injury problems. I think Duggar surpassed him. Kevin Byard's having a decent year. He just got traded to Philadelphia. But, like, I think you'd rather have a Duggar than him. So it's kind of tricky. Like, is he worth $15+ million per year? I'm not sure, but I think I want to keep him around. I know that. I know he's young. I know he's talented. I know he's ascending. So why would I get rid of that player? even if I'm going to rebuild a little bit over the next year or two. So that is kind of my stance on that one. All right, so today we're acting as if the Patriots could be sellers. Tomorrow we're going to flip the script. We're going to be on the buyer side of things. We'll take a look at some players the Patriots could try to acquire at the trade deadline. And again, I think this weekend's critical. You beat Miami, the scale could at least shift toward the possibility of buying. So subscribe. Join us tomorrow. We will have pretty much the same video, but on the buyer side of things. So stay tuned for that. And when I say we, I'm talking about myself and producer Rolly, a.k.a. Super Patriots fan Nick Roloff. I wanted to bring you in here right now, Nick, because Kyle Dugger, Josh Uche, two of your young assets on defense, I'm hesitant to trade these guys if the trade value isn't proper, especially with Dugger. Like, you'd have to get blown away if you're asking me.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think when you look at these two guys, the only one of them that I would trade is Josh Uche. And I actually would rather, I don't say rather, but I would keep Josh Uche because he's a double-digit sack guy when he plays a full set of games. Him and Judon were really dynamic for the Patriots defense last year, but I think you could flip him for that second-round pick. And the Patriots always find a way to get good pass rush production, no matter who it is. So trading away Uche, you could probably find his replacement. With Kyle Dugger, though, you have that safety tandem of him and Jabril Peppers. You have something there. I wouldn't trade away Dugger. He was your first overall pick in that draft 4 years ago. Uche was your second, so good hit by Bill Belichick there, those back-to-back picks. But I'd keep Dugger for sure. Uche I'd move on from if on the right price. But like Harrison mentioned, I'm only doing it for a second-round pick.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. Let's shift to the offensive side of the ball here. DeVante Parker. I know you guys love DeVante Parker. Sarcasm font there. It just has not worked out. He's just been very inconsistent. I did not like his answer after the Raiders game when he was asked if he should have caught that ball. Great ball from Matt Jones. Next play, it's a safety, and they lose the game. And his answer was kind of like, well, I'd like to think I can catch it, but it was kind of off the fingertips, so I'm not sure. So can you catch it or not? Because to me, that was a pretty damn good ball. Was it absolutely perfect? I'm not sure. But a good NFL receiver makes that play, and I'll take it a step further. A good NFL receiver owns that. Like, even if deep down you're like, that's a tough catch. You're like, yeah, man, I got to help my quarterback out. Didn't like that answer. To me, like, get DeVante Parker off my team. I like what I thought from what I saw from Demario Douglas. I like what I saw. Hell, even Jalen Reagor gave you some decent snaps here. Like, I just think DeVante Parker, we even saw it in Miami, even when he had more production in some years, sometimes he looks awesome. Sometimes he looks like he could be a legit number 2 in this league. And then other times it's like, are you even playing hard? Do you care? I'm not really sure. So, I mean, look, in 19 games, he's got less than 700 yards. Like, this is not what you signed up for if you are New England. So I don't have major interest in keeping him at this point. If you can get a late-round pick, I think I would certainly do that. Shout out to Evan Laser here for having the snap counts this week. I mean, he's getting out snapped by Douglas, Kendrick Bourne. Rager's right there. I mean, like, he's a practice squad elevation. And, look, I know he's been injured. I know he hasn't shown a ton. But, like, I'd rather see more Tyquan Thornton at this point. I know they're different stylistic receivers, but why not give the second-round pick, a guy you took a premium selection on in the draft recently, a look over DeVante Parker, who we kind of know what he is. At times, he can be a good player, but he's very inconsistent. If you could get a 6th-round pick at the deadline for him, I think I would make that move. All right, a couple more players to discuss, but first, Prize Picks. Daily Fantasy Sports, the best app in the business when it comes to DFS is Prize Picks. Get started today, prizepicks.com/CLNS. Use code CLNS to get a deposit match up to $100. What makes Prize Picks so awesome is how easy it is, how simple it is. You pick anywhere from 2 to 6 players, and if they will go for more or less than their Prize Picks projection here. I've got a 2-player entry here. DJ Moore, more than on the yard, Sunday Night Football against the Chargers. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp have kind of been alternating big games for the Rams. Last week, it was Nacua who had a big game, so I'm going to flip that. I think Cooper Kupp goes off against Dallas. Nacua steps back a little bit, so I'll go less on the yards for him. PrizePicks.com/CLNS. Use code CLNS. You can win for anywhere from up to 3 times your money with 2-player entries to 25 times your money when you do a 6-player entry. It's Prize Picks, the best app when it comes to daily fantasy sports. All right, Juju Smith-Schuster, the next wide receiver here on our trade candidates. I mean, just a disaster, right? Like, and Look, I do think some of this does go back to what we talked about last week on that report where Bill Belichick could get fired potentially. His inability to evaluate offensive talent properly is just hurting this franchise. Like, you had Jakobi Meyers. He signed for 3 years and $33 million with the Raiders. You opted to sign Juju for 3 for 25, which is very close to the same deal, and it's night and day who's better. I'm not saying Jakobi Meyers is a number 1 receiver, but he's a very solid complementary player. Kind of middle of the pack number 2, great number 3. You could have had him at 10, 11 million bucks per year. Instead, you bring in Juju, who, by the way, 3 for 25 on paper isn't that much money. The Kansas City Chiefs got 900 yards out of Juju last year. If they weren't going to match that, shouldn't that tell you something? Like, something may not be right here. He's had the knee issue. He can't get on the field. Just a monumental mistake. This one really hurts. I mean, if you had Jakobi Meyers on this offense, especially now that Mac's starting to play a little bit better, I mean, you'd like how things look a little bit more. But unfortunately, that is not the case here. So I don't know if there's a trade out there for Juju. Could you maybe find what we've seen out there with a lot of these trades? Like you get a 6th-round pick, the team you're trading Juju for gets 7th in Juju, maybe. But I don't know, man. You might be stuck here, which is not a great situation to be in. All right, pick one to trade. Which receiver would you rather ship out of town? Type DP for DeVante Parker, JJ for Juju Smith-Schuster. No, I was ripping on Parker, but I think he can give you a little more juice at this point. Like, if you can get something for Juju, I think I'm going to ship him out. So I'm going to type my JJ for Juju Smith-Schuster. And then another player that's been discussed here on this show, Mike Gesicki, the tight end. He's been okay, but he doesn't block at all. We saw that on that safety allowed Max Crosby of Mac Jones. They tried to chip with Gesicki. He just completely whiffed. Still a decent receiving threat, but hasn't been nearly as explosive. 8.8 yards per catch, so they haven't been able to maximize his talents. I still don't think he gets traded, though, because A, Mac Jones likes throwing to tight ends, and B, what are you really getting for him? Like, you might as well just keep him if it's like a 7th-round pick or something like that. So we'll keep an eye on this one. But those are 5 players that the New England Patriots could opt to trade if they decide to sell at the NFL trade deadline. Again, come back tomorrow. We'll have 5 trade targets if the Patriots decide to be buyers. Keep an eye on that here on the show. Subscribe, turn on the notifications. We'll see you soon.